Hey guys, so in this video, I'm really excited to talk to you about something that I've been researching for ages, and something that in some respects, I think I see a bigger picture than most people probably see with the cryptocurrency called Qubic. And I'm excited I'm going to try my best in this video to share with you logical steps and logical thoughts that I have about why this crypto called Qubic is so underrated right now and so undervalued, and why it potentially could hit a market cap of $1 trillion and above. And I know that sounds crazy. I'm not saying that's guaranteed, but I'm going to show you really, really logical steps that are going to be very hard for anyone to deny, to explain why this crypto possibly could go to $1 trillion market cap and above. And even if it doesn't go that high, just that it could go really, really high in market cap. So let's get into it. Okay, guys, so for quite a while, if you follow Sergey Ivanche, come from beyond, who is the person who initially created Qubic, you'll know that he's talked about believing that Qubic will go to $1 trillion market cap. And people laugh and they think that's crazy because only one crypto's ever done it, which is Bitcoin. Nothing else has really come close. But some others will cross that mark eventually. And I think Ethereum probably will at some point. I think CAS probably will at some point. I really believe that Qubic can and probably will at some point if it can deliver on its promises. So I want to explain to you why. So this was just kind of based off something that I saw a lot of people laughing at. So Come From Beyond posted this recently and said, another opinion hinting at why Qubic, armed with Aigarth, has potential, or Aigarth, has potential to reach 1 trillion market capitalization. And then it just says down here, many trillions of dollars will go into GPU, data center, and power build out. So it's saying that the most extraordinary techno-capital acceleration has been set in motion. As AI revenue grows rapidly, many trillions of dollars will go into GPU, data center, and power build-out before the end of the decade. The industrial mobilization, including growing US electricity production by tens of percent, will be intense. So I'm going to take you step by step on why Qubic is a complete game changer in so many respects, and why this statement here is really, really important. So yeah, let's start off firstly with Sergey Ivanche. So a lot of you guys are familiar with him. Some of you mightn't be familiar with him, but Sergey has been involved in crypto right from the start. Like, he's one of the OGs. So when Bitcoin came around, Sergey Ivanche was apparently the third person ever to mine Bitcoin. He, for a decade before that, and probably much longer, was interested in developing crypto projects and decentralized currencies. So he, it was a big deal to him already. So he's involved in this space long before that. Then around, I can't remember what year it was, but maybe 2012, 2013, he created the cryptocurrency NXT, which was the first true proof-of-stake cryptocurrency, and the first cryptocurrency that wasn't just a flat-out copy or duplicate of Bitcoin. It was something completely different and something that moved technology forward. And now many cryptocurrencies are based on that idea of proof of stake. Then he took that project as far as he could. That project still exists and is controlled and run by other people. Then he took over the project called IOTA. And IOTA then went on to be, a massive project as well. And it was the first DAG project. Now, he was co-creator in IOTA. He had a fallout with the team on IOTA, and that's when he went and created Qubic. And what he eventually meant to do with IOTA was he was going to build something like Qubic on top of IOTA and bring IOTA to the next level. But I think it just became way easier for him to start his own project. Now, just in terms of returns, NXT and IOTA have given two of the highest returns ever for early crypto investors. Anyone who invested in NXT during the ICO made half 1,000,000% return on their investment, while anyone who invested in IOTA during the ICO made a 615,000 return on their investment. Now, Qubic, being a fair launch project, didn't have an ICO, But still, if you're buying now, you're in the very early phases of this project. So you would expect that it possibly could perform in the same way that these projects did in the past, but time will tell on that front. So Sergey Ivanche, why is a big deal, right? Is that firstly, the first time that Qubic was ever mentioned was back in September 2012, and if you see some of his recent postings from Sergey Ivanche, he's planned Qubic for over 20 years. He's had this idea, and he's been kind of looking at a way that he could make it work. And finally, the technology's caught up for him to make it work. But he initially talked about Qubic back in 2012, and he basically wanted to create a crypto that wasn't based on blockchain technology, but was based in something called Quorum technology, which was an idea that was suggested by Nick Szabo. And a Quorum makes a crypto very, very decentralized and very, very secure, but it's also more easily scalable because Qubic runs on what are called epochs and ticks. So anyway, back in 2012, he explained that Qubic is a medium of exchange, that it's a way of improving on Bitcoin with having all the advantages that Bitcoin has, but none of the disadvantages. It's based on a quorum-based concept, telling what Qubics are, that they're the data that contain value Qubics, their public and private keys, so on, and how Qubics are created is that they're minted and so on. So it's very early phase that he was thinking about this, but he's trying to think of something that was scalable and decentralized and as secure as Bitcoin, so that all the advantages of Bitcoin, but none of the disadvantages. But amazingly, so yeah, as I said then, it's based on this idea of quorum systems by Nick Szabo, which was originally discussed in 1998. And, you can go into the details of that, but it explains how to make a completely decentralized system and a very secure system. And that's what Qubic is based on. So we won't go into the crazy reading too much in this, but it's really the point that I want to drive home is that a quorum is very decentralized and very, very secure. And I think that's a really important point. As decentralized and as secure as Bitcoin, actually, in many respects, more decentralized and more secure than Bitcoin. And again, I won't go into the reasons for that, but it's got to come down with, it comes down to the fact that gaining a 51% attack on a quorum is impossible. So then that brings us to the point of the crypto or blockchain trilemma, which you've probably heard of in the past, and I've mentioned a lot. But the blockchain trilemma was something coined by Vitalik Buterin with Ethereum, and he said that there was an unsolvable problem in cryptocurrencies, which was that there's always a trade-off between these three pillars of cryptocurrencies. So the three pillars are decentralization, scalability, and security. So generally, if you take something like Bitcoin, it's very secure, very decentralized, but it isn't scalable because, as you probably know, it can cost something like $50 sometimes for a Bitcoin transaction, and it can take your transaction can take anything from an hour to a couple of days to go through. The same with Ethereum. Then you've got many other cryptocurrencies that are scalable, but they're not secure and decentralized. CAS has become the first blockchain technology that's secure, decentralized, and scalable. But actually, at the same time, Qubic kind of snuck under the radar because it's not a blockchain, it's a quorum. But Qubic can do 40 million transactions per second. It's really, really, really scalable, but it's also more secure and more decentralized than Bitcoin is. So it also solves the trilemma. It also solves what's called the energy trilemma, because Qubic, for reasons that we'll explain later, is completely sustainable because it reuses energy. While Bitcoin wastes energy, Qubic reuses energy and, provides energy equity and then obviously energy security because of the energy equity shows the decentralization element, and then energy security shows the security element. Is basically the point that I'm trying to get at here. And obviously we're moving into a more green energy world and a more world that's focused on sustainability. So any project that can could focus on that need is going to be a big deal. So, I'm 100% at CAS Maxi and 100% love CAS, and I believe that's going to perform super well. But CAS isn't an energy efficient project. I know people who love CAS will watch this and that'll annoy them, me saying that. It's not that I've got anything against CAS. I love the project, but it's not energy efficient because mining energy just goes to waste. Miners' energy is just used to create blocks, which is just wasted energy. While with Qubic, mining energy is used to decentralized, secure, and power the network. Also used to train artificial intelligence, which I will explain later. That's not a point I'm trying to argue. I'm not trying to have a go at CAS. I'm just making a statement of fact right there, and that's a big reason why I think Qubic could become a dominant force, because this is a big issue in the world right now, as we all know. So let's talk about some of the really, really unique and incredible things about Qubic that makes it a big deal. And I'm going to get into more details on why. I know I'm not hitting on the points of why this could become $1 trillion market cap project yet. I'll get to that soon. But let's talk about, first of all, so Qubic is the first ever useful proof of work L1 blockchain. Now, interestingly, even that statement, Qubic isn't actually a blockchain as Quorum. They would say in some respects it's an L0, but we're getting to the point of what we want to say here is that a layer 1 project is a project where a whole ecosystem can be built on top of the Qubic, can be built on top of the Qubic project. So with a whole ecosystem on top of the project, you've got things like DEXs are going to be built there, other tokens are going to be built there, other projects are going to be built on top of it, and all these projects are going to obviously burn queues, are obviously going to bring more use and eyes to the network, which just by itself will raise a lot of value. And why I say it's a useful proof of work here is because of what we said, is that it's a proof of work platform. So miners are mining Qubic and getting paid in Qubic to secure the network, to provide proof of work to the network, but at the same time they're training artificial intelligence. Okay, then really important thing, which is very, very unique or close to completely unique, is that transactions are feeless on the Qubic network, and it's got offline payment verification. So just really, really unique and important things to state there. It's useful proof of work. So instead, as we said here when we talk about the green energy element, instead of wasting the energy of our miners, they perform artificial intelligence tasks for researching solutions for Aigarth. So basically, miners, with CAS or Bitcoin or Ethereum, any of these other cryptocurrencies out there. Now, Ethereum I know doesn't have miners anymore, but any ones that are proof of work, the miners are solving tasks that have no importance or no meaning just to secure the network. But with Qubic, the miners are solving tasks that are actually training AI, so that energy is all being put to use. And that's a really, really important point that's going to get to why I think Qubic could be worth trillions of dollars in market cap in the future. Now, the first point is just because it makes Qubic sustainable, and that's going to be a really big deal for the cryptos that dominate the world and are the main ones that are adopted by governments and got adopted worldwide. So that's a really, really big deal. So then it's super scalable. So it's got 40 million smart contract transfers per second, which is, as far as I know, completely unique. So that's why we're super scalable here. The fact that we're Quorum is why we're decentralized and secure. So we're solving all these things that are big problems in the world right here already. Then Qubic uses not only GPU when miners are working or in the network, it also uses CPU, which makes it more efficient and way faster and way more scalable. So that's another big deal and something that's, as far as I know, completely unique to Qubic. So then there's this thing that we're going to explain and talk about at the end of this video called Aigarth or Aigarth, which is AI on top of Qubic. And Aigarth aims to provide true AI open source to everyone. Really important again is it says here open source. So anyone can use Aigarth and have the solutions completely open source, which again is going to provide use cases for all over the world. So again, for providing sustainability for the world, for making the world a better place. So, even some kids in Africa could use Aigarth. The poorest of poor regions in third world countries could use Aigarth. But at the same time, huge corporations could use Aigarth. If it works, that's the most important thing to state. That they still haven't got this actually happening yet, and we're going to see in the future how well Aigarth works. But also, I'm going to explain why, even if Aigarth doesn't work, Qubic can hit that $1 trillion market cap. And that's the thing that'll blow your mind, is it doesn't even need Aigarth to work to achieve this sort of outcome. And then just to say here, true AI, and they just say Aigarth aims to be true AI for everyone. So again, they want completely decentralized AI, and they're going to achieve this decentralized AI by having miners, through useful proof of work, mining on the Qubic network, training Aigarth, making the first artificial general intelligence that has true AI that can solve problems in all of the world. And the reason it's going to be decentralized is because it's all built on top of this decentralized, secure network that's scalable to serve the needs of the whole world. So then it's also got smart contracts, which is something unique that, CAS is only adding smart contracts right now. A lot of crypto platforms out there don't have smart contracts, but Qubic is already smart contract ready. So unique smart contracts with burn mechanism and launch via an IPO with the possibility of passive income. That's a whole other story to go into, is that when a smart contract launches on the Qubic network, there's an IPO happens which burns Qubic, and that burn mechanism actually makes the tokenomics really favorable, meaning that Qubic shouldn't inflate too much in the future, which is a whole other story to talk about in the future. Like, Qubic is completely open source. So again, this is really important. The AI and Qubic is going to be open source, but Qubic just as itself is open source. All development is open source and available on GitHub. So anyone can build with Qubic, can use Qubic right now, or can view that source code and can even copy that source code right now. So that's really important to see. And again, for big corporations to be working with Qubic and huge organizations worldwide, this is a really big deal, the fact that Qubic is open source. And then oracles. So Qubic comes with oracles, and a lot of crypto and blockchain platforms don't come with oracles. Oracles bridge between the digital blockchain environment and the outside world. They provide real-world data to smart contracts and the Qubic protocol. So basically, Qubic can connect to the real world and the internet through oracles and can download data in real time. And then that data can be used for any number of reasons, but most interestingly for linking with AI. So AI in real time can react to all these things that's going on in the world. And then, as we said, outsource computation. So with the help of Oracle machines, Aigarth can outsource computations around the globe. So yet again, this is a really big deal. This is why Qubic can hit $1 trillion market cap, even if Aigarth doesn't take off in the way that we expect, is that Qubic can do outsourced computations. So any company can come to Qubic. They can have computations that they want to get done, and they can use all the mining power that is pouring into the Qubic network to complete those computations. And we'll explain that more as we go through this video. And then the other huge thing that Qubic has going for is a really, really powerful community. I mean, an obsessive community. So there's two communities that I see that are up and coming right now, and they are CAS and Qubic. And people are just obsessive about these projects. And you also have people that hate these projects. And anytime you see people hating a project, it's generally because that project has something special about it. And you're going to get people who love once you have something that people love, you're always going to get people who hate it. It's kind of a law of the world. And if people don't hate your project, or don't hate you, or don't hate what you're doing, then it's most likely that people are going to love you and love what you're doing as well. But Qubic has a huge community already that's growing and growing. And when people get into Qubic and truly start to understand it, they become a bit obsessive. And you're seeing that with the community. Now, the community is that obsessive that they actually, through the community, raised $1 million during a fundraiser, which is going to contribute to exchange listings. And that's a really big deal again, because Qubic is a fair launch project, meaning that it was just released one day. The only way to get it then was to, even for the creators of the project, was just to mine it or buy it. That was the only way to get it. And even though the people who created it invest money into the project, it's a community-driven project, which is just really important to note as well, and makes it completely untouchable from a regulatory standpoint as well. So now the roadmap, or some things that Qubic are talking about happening in the future, is just, and these are just interesting points. I just want to build a little bit of a thesis out here for you before I explain why I think this project could go to $1 trillion. But they've onboarded a marketing agency, so they're focusing on their marketing. They've built a meme character. They're running upcoming events. They have a Chinese marketing specialist, AI specialists that are working to study and write scientific papers. They've got technical writers working on them, so developing technical papers about Qubic. They're working on a finalized white paper right now, so you're getting in there really early. That already the white paper doesn't even exist. That's how early you are if you're joining Qubic now. And they're working on a Zeely campaign to boost community engagement. Then they've got video producers, YouTube managers, Blog 2.0. The reason I'm sharing this stuff is to show that these guys are serious about creating a project with serious papers behind it, but also marketing the project. They're not just based on fundamentals. They understand the importance of building a strong community, building official papers behind the project, and marketing this project like crazy, which is a really big deal. Then some other things that I think are important here are the bigger projects that are in the progress. They're working on a massive hackathon, which obviously is a big deal. They're working on their roadmap, which this is just a kind of precursor to the roadmap. Then they have a grant program which is launching. So they're launching a grant program to engage more developers and projects, so people can actually come with their idea for the Qubic network, and then Qubic will give them money to build on the network. And then they're trying to improve their global connections throughout the world. And then they're deepening collaborations with Microsoft, Google, and universities and other prominent companies. And some people laugh when they say that they're deepening their connections with Microsoft and Google, but they've already had Microsoft speaking at their events. They've already spoken at events with Google. So these companies are aware of what Qubic is, but that in itself isn't a big deal. But as I'll explain later in this video, you're going to see why these companies would want to collaborate with Qubic. And then obviously they've got IPOs launching, which are burning, which are going to burn Qubic as well. Okay, so let's talk now about why this project could go to $1 trillion conceivably. So bear in mind that this is a layer 1 project that is completely decentralized already, completely scalable, completely secure, and it's one of the first projects ever to do that. Also, it's completely energy efficient. And now the big thing that we're going to get into is compute power. So these little chips, there's not enough of these in the world. There's more and more compute tasks that everyone in the world wants to do, and every major company in the world wants to do. The only issue is they can't get the compute power. They can build computers if they wanted to, but they actually just can't get the physical chips to run all those tasks. It's just the number of tasks that need compute power is growing exponentially, but the number of chips isn't. So there's like a war on right now for compute power, and people have described computer chips like the oil of the future, because it's a limited resource that major players are fighting over, and the winner is going to be very rich and successful from that. So then if we look at, when we talk about compute power, if you think of AWS and Azure, that are both run these huge data centers where anyone in the world can plug into these data centers, and they can get compute power that previously was inaccessible to them. just for a small business or maybe a super large business, and they can get that at a cheap cost. That's what AWS and Azure's whole businesses are based on. And I want to go back here all the way to the first slide while I talk about that, because in this first slide, we saw many trillions of dollars will go into GPU, data center, and power build-out. Now, if we go back to AWS and Azure, these are large data centers, as we said there, where trillions of dollars are going to pour into, and these data centers are basically just full of these computer chips. So, in AWS, they're called EC2, and that's the real resource that people want when they plug into these huge data centers. But with the growing need for this compute power, it's only, AWS and Azure, they're not going to be able to get all that compute power eventually, and they also need compute power for themselves. So it's a model where they can't grow as much as they need to. But if we go back here to useful proof of work, well, what is happening here with Qubic is we have miners who are all from all over the world, and they're adding their compute power. So you can have people in Ireland, the UK, the USA, China, Japan, all mining Qubic, and all that power is going into the Qubic network, and it's giving its CPU and GPU power to the Qubic network. So in many respects, Qubic is actually creating a completely decentralized, distributed data center that people can plug into. So right now, Qubic has 500,000 miners working, over 500,000 miners working, providing their decentralized compute power to the Qubic network. And this is what a data center would look like inside. But just imagine all of this data center being spread out all over the world, completely decentralized, from people with just small computers to maybe some bigger miners mining on the Qubic network, providing that power that anyone from big corporations to just normal people can plug into. So basically, Qubic is like one of these data centers. And this is where we get on to this article that was actually written by Come From Beyond, Sergey Ivanche, back in 2002. So we're back here and we're talking about that he was talking, that Sergey Ivanche was talking about Qubic back in 2012. But it turns out that in 2002, so like 22 years ago, Sergey Ivanche wrote a paper discussing basically this distributed computing. So doing this and building distributed data centers through distributed computing. And what he wanted to do was find a way to run what are called applets on users' computers rather than on a server, allowing you to harness the power of thousands of client computers rather than one busy server. And then he said, Java language, you can develop a program that implements a distributed search for solutions to problems that require a large amount of computation. So he's basically been saying for 22 years that if there was a way to get distributed computing power, you could go and perform large computations in a distributed way. So basically, you could build a data center like this in a distributed way. So let me explain that a little bit more in a minute. So, this is why then I've been saying that there's a clear reason why Google and Microsoft could work with Qubic. 500,000 miners providing their computing power to the supercomputer. Because Come From Beyond has already said that Qubic miners is a distributed data center. So, a distributed data center, just like AWS or Azure. And he said the last time we gauged its computing power, it was number 6 in the rating of the supercomputers. So number 6 in the rating of supercomputers, up against things like AWS and Azure. It's number 6 already, and this is a very early phase project. Now, when we look at that comment at the start that we looked at where Sergey Ivanche was talking about Qubic hitting $1 trillion market cap, he said many trillions of dollars will go into GPU, data center, and power build-out. And here he is stating that Qubic miners is a distributed data center that's number 6 in the rating of supercomputers. So I hope you're beginning to join the dots now, but I'm going to explain it a bit more. So let's talk about the compute power shortage. So this is something that I wrote on Twitter, but I really want to take you through the phases of this now, because I think it's going to link to everything that we said so far and really start to bring it together for you. So firstly, the compute power shortage, which we were already discussing. Compute power is a scarce commodity these days, and it is described by many as the oil of the future. Everything requires computational power, and there just aren't enough computer chips to serve all the needs of the world. It is becoming increasingly difficult for companies to obtain the computational power they require to develop their plans. Of course, companies like Microsoft and Google are able to get a lot of computational power, but it is a huge expense, and they currently don't have the computational power required to build artificial general intelligence. Artificial general intelligence, by the way, being artificial intelligence that's as smart and logical, or far smarter eventually and more logical than any human is. And I'll explain that in more detail at the end of this video. So the Qubic solution. Qubic has developed an ingenious way of gathering computational power. They are paying people all over the world to lend the power of their computers, GPU and CPU, to the Qubic network. So that is these miners are the people they're paying to lend their GPU and CPU power, which we were mentioning back here. So it's the CPU and GPU power to the Qubic network. So let's get back to where we were and continue with that. So Qubic does this by creating 1 trillion Qubic every week that the above people can mine. So this 500,000 miners can mine that Qubic. And that's how they get paid to lend their power to the Qubic network. When these people mine Qubic, they are lending their computational power to the Qubic network. They get paid Qubic for lending this power. Currently, Qubic has over 500,000 miners providing their power to the network, which makes Qubic, in its very early phases, the 6th largest supercomputer in the world. Now here's the really ingenious part. Comfrey Beyond first discussed the idea of building a supercomputer in a paper back in 2002. So this was the first time that Comfrey Beyond was talking about building a supercomputer in this way. But what was the issue? He knew that he could build a supercomputer through a distributed computing network using Java applets, but he didn't know how to incentivize people to give their computational power to the supercomputer. So, you or I aren't just going to start giving our power to some supercomputer for nothing. So he needed to find a way to incentivize people. And, in those 22 years, he didn't find a way to do it until about 2 years ago. He eventually found out how it's possible to incentivize people to give their computational power. So he finally realized that crypto and mining was the solution. Through burns, Qubic aims to create an equilibrium in supply growth and supply deflation, meaning that 1 trillion Qubic will be created every week, but simultaneously, on average, 1 trillion Qubic will be burned every week. Now, this is hypothetically speaking, this is the plan. I don't know, will it work out that well? And time will tell, but this is the plan, is that we're going to see the supply of Qubic stagnate, I guess you'd say, or it reach an equilibrium. So as Qubic inflates that 1 trillion, there's going to be a burn that offsets it, so that it at least won't be very inflationary. What that means is that the miners can sell their Qubic for a profit, but because of the burns, it won't cause the price of Qubic to go down. So this should make Qubic valuable, which will attract more and more miners. Imagine Qubic with 100x more miners than it currently has. And the goal is to become the #1 supercomputer in the world. And as we said, they're already getting there, because they're the number 6 in supercomputers right now. And yeah, we'll get onto this. So why Google, Microsoft, Meta, or Amazon can't do this? So that's the big question. Right now you're just like, well, why don't these companies, Google, Microsoft, Meta, or Amazon, just build their own supercomputer? But they can't, and here's why. So the next question will be, if Qubic can build a supercomputer through distributed computing, why can't all the major tech companies just do the same thing? The issue major tech companies have is that they can't incentivize people to give their computational power to their supercomputers. Think about it. How would Google, Microsoft, Meta, or Amazon incentivize someone? So you, for example, how would they incentivize you to give their computational power to build a company's supercomputer. The only way they could do it is by paying you with dollars or whatever your local currency is, because, for you to give the power of your computer, you've got to use the electrical supply in your house. So you would need Google, Microsoft, Meta, or Amazon to give you enough of your local currency in return so that it's profitable for you to go and give your power. Unless you're just really, really giving person, you're not going to want to be running up an electricity bill and not getting paid anything for it. But obviously, with Qubic, you can get paid in Qubic, and then that Qubic is valuable, and that way you're actually making a profit. And here's the thing, is that these companies can't just create their own cryptocurrency. Remember when Meta tried to create a cryptocurrency called Libra? They were prevented from doing this by governments of the world because this would give Meta too much power over currency and the world in general. For this reason, the only option big tech companies have is to pay billions of dollars each month to incentivize people to provide their computational power. So that's the only way they could build a distributed supercomputer, is by paying out billions of dollars. Or the other way that they can do this is to buy all the equipment themselves, which would cost an incredible amount of money. And it just isn't possible to buy it because that many GPUs and CPUs don't exist. So when you think about Amazon and Azure, their data centers, imagine how much that costs to make. Imagine that, and imagine if they need to build something 100 times that size to get the computational power they need to build an artificial general intelligence. It's just too expensive, and there isn't even the CPUs and GPUs and computer chips out there to do it. So they've got a problem, and they can't pay people. They can't create a cryptocurrency to pay people to use their computational power either. So although the big tech companies might have the ideas, which, they've got great thinkers that have great ideas, they currently can't access the computational power needed to achieve their goals. So why will they work with Qubic? And I'm guessing you've put 2 plus 2 together at this point, but let's just break it down. If big tech companies can't build a big enough supercomputer themselves, and if building supercomputers is extremely expensive, then don't you think they would want to access a supercomputer that is completely open source and super inexpensive? And as we said already, was Qubic open source, using useful proof of work, has distributed computing from all over the world, and a supercomputer already, the number 6 supercomputer in the world. Just like companies all over the world use AWS and Azure to access large amounts of computational power for cheap, the big tech companies can use Qubic to access an incredibly powerful supercomputer at fractions of the cost that it would take for them to build their own computers. Add to this the fact that Qubic is developing artificial intelligence with Aigarth, and Aigarth, if it works, will be able to provide big tech companies with open source solutions that they can use to build tools and develop solutions of their own. So I hope it's coming together now, how big of a deal this is, because the Qubic is connected to real world data through its oracles, so it can get real world data and real time data through oracles, and it can outsource those computations with the help of the oracle machines. It can outsource computations all over the world. And what do these big tech companies want to do? They want to outsource computations. And then if you look at what was wrote by Sergey Ivanche back in 2002, he said that using the Java language, you can develop a program that implements a distributed search for solutions to problems that require a large amount of computation. And that's exactly what these major companies are trying to do. And that's basically that's all that these data centers are. They're ways to run huge computations. When you break it down, I know it's more complicated than that, but basically it's all about computational power. And if you look then at what Sergey Ivanche is saying here, is that Qubic is a distributed data center that someone can plug into for really cheap. And as we said before, it's open source, and it's just using the power of people all over the world. So then, the conclusion here is, of course, none of this is guaranteed. And I always love to say that that's really important. Nothing's guaranteed yet, but to happen. But the wheels are already in motion, and Qubic just has to keep doing what it's doing for this to happen. If Qubic can become the number 1 supercomputer and provide a cheap open source solution then big tech companies will be insane not to partner with them. And if Aigarth truly works, every big tech company will be kicking down the door to work with Qubic. I'll end by saying that nothing is guaranteed in crypto, but Qubic looks solid and there are far from zero reasons for big tech companies to partner with them. And the reason I say far from zero reasons is I was just responding to someone here that said there were zero reasons that Google or Microsoft or Apple would partner with Qubic. And they said, use your brain, for crying out loud. And, this is me using my brain and explaining why there's so many reasons for them to want to work. And here's where I want to get to something that's really important. Is everything that I said so far, all that stuff that I said so far, that isn't pie in the sky. All of that is already happening. Everything except for Aigarth is already happened and proven with Qubic. And now it's just a case of growing and growing. None of this is stuff that isn't happening. They're already building this data center. They're already completely decentralized, secure, and scalable. They're already a green energy platform. They're already feeless. They have oracles. They've already got an ecosystem building on top of this network. There's already a big community behind this. This is already a big deal. All of this is already happening, and nothing that I've said yet is something that they're looking to develop soon. It's all already happened and happening. So now let's talk about, why, because we still haven't explained why Qubic could go to $1 trillion, but let's look at the number one ranked company in terms of market cap in the world, which is Nvidia. And Nvidia is a world leader in artificial intelligence computing. Nvidia invents the GPU that drives advances in AI, gaming, all this sort of stuff. But here's the important term. It invents the GPU. So it's focused on GPU power, and it's got a market cap of around 3 trillion right now, I think, Nvidia, and it's the number one company in the world. And it's focused, the main thing that's focused on is GPU for artificial intelligence. It's not creating artificial intelligence itself, it's just creating the GPU for artificial intelligence. And what is Qubic right now? Well, it's the number 6 for distributed computing and number 6 supercomputer. So it's competing already. Even if Aigarth doesn't work, Qubic, just by getting all that computational power and also being something that solves the trilemma, being something that can run smart contracts, a whole ecosystem can be built on top of it, and as a currency, it's already able to beat Nvidia if it can grow more. It's already a better solution than Nvidia is, and it's actually an Nvidia killer. Now, there's many other projects as well, or a few other projects that do the same thing quite well, like DNX or NMT are two ones that just spring to mind straight away. But none of them have all the other things going on that Qubic does, with being completely a trilemma solver. They're not as scalable as Qubic. Their DNX is layer 1, but NMT isn't. Render, for example, isn't layer 1. These projects, they're inferior to Qubic. And then there's some points that I just wanted to make here then. So I said, that there's exciting things I've noticed about Qubic. So just things that they're doing very strategically. And their goal is to obviously open up completely new markets for Qubic through these listings, because you can see other exchange listings are in different areas of the world right now. And then they're bringing in new representatives to the team that they're adding there to grow their exposure in different areas of the world. And then, as we said before, they're working on developing scientific papers, white papers. They're working on developing socials, blogs, videos, working with major businesses and universities. And from all this, you can see that there's a clear focus to bring Qubic to new and diverse markets that are both retail and corporate based. And I find all this really positive news because we already have a revolutionary project in place. Many projects fail because they don't focus on developing reach and marketing. And Qubic's really focusing on reach and marketing and communicating with its community and people who care about the project. Qubic is by no means some flash in the pan project that's looking to make a quick buck. This is a decentralized, secure, open source, fair launch layer 1 or layer 0 even, green energy project focused on revolutionizing artificial intelligence with scalability potential to serve the whole world in terms of finance and artificial intelligence. This is a multifaceted project that covers the areas of artificial intelligence, decentralized finance, and deep in and gaming, because there's computer games being released in Qubic now as well. This is the definition of an early stage blue chip project with a team working on it that realized the importance of fundamentals, technicals, marketing, and communications. Nothing is guaranteed anywhere in life, but Qubic is, in my opinion, the closest to a guarantee you will ever see, and the sky is the limit for this project. This week I'll release a video, which is this video, about why the $1 trillion market cap might sound crazy, but it's actually very possible for Qubic. Now, I want to end this video by talking about Aigarth. So, as I said, everything that I've mentioned in this video already, it's already happened. All that's in place. Qubic already, it just needs to keep growing, and it's going to outdo Nvidia and outgrow Nvidia, and it's already got that GPU power. So already Nvidia's got a $1 trillion market cap already, $3 trillion market cap already. Qubic, I believe, just based on what we said so far, can grow to a $1 trillion market cap without even the AI element, which is Aigarth or Aigarth. And Aigarth is the AI running on top of Qubic that gets this information from hundreds of thousands of Qubic miners, which are creating billions of artificial neural networks. And this is true AI, completely decentralized, completely secure, and completely scalable, that's aimed for everyone. I'm going to end this video by talking about Aigarth, but I'm going to end, instead of me talking here, I created a really good video a while back that a lot of you haven't seen, which is one when I used to spend more time in these videos and record every word that I was going to say to a script, and I scripted a video describing what Aigarth is and how it works. And basically, it's the idea of this is to create an intelligence far greater than any humans. And if Qubic can achieve that, I mean, forget about $1 trillion market cap. Think way, way, way higher than that for Qubic's potential. And before I go play this video, I want to say again, nothing is guaranteed anywhere in the world, but Qubic seems like such a safe bet. I mean, if you're not convinced by what I've said so far, I don't know what will convince you. This is one of the greatest projects I've ever seen. So let's look at this video now. I think this video, I think it's the best video I ever created, and I think it'll blow your mind as well as I talk about Aigarth. Artificial general intelligence. Unless you are living under a rock, you will have heard of it. It is one of the most exciting potential developments of our time, but at the same time, one of the scariest. An AGI is an artificial intelligence that will be created by humans and will be initially as clever as a human being, and then very, very quickly become far more intelligent than all humans combined. It will have the power to cure every illness we know of. It will be able to solve global warming. It will be able to prevent any more wars. It will be able to end hunger and starvation in the whole world. It will even be able to cure aging and death and answer every question that we've ever had on this planet. But it could also potentially decide that humans are a threat and wipe us off the face of this planet. Suddenly, Skynet from the Terminator movies does not seem so unrealistic. In this video, I'm going to explain how a project called Qubic is working on developing the world's first artificial general intelligence, and how Qubic has a clear roadmap on how we are going to get there. I remember being in college one day around 13 years ago. I was young, uninterested, and probably quite hungover. I was lying bent over my desk with my head resting in my arms when a marketing lecturer began handing out some printed paper with some boring college notes on it. This lecturer was a bit out there and would often scream and roar in class and act out some dramatic events. They were one of the few lecturers that I actually could be bothered going into class to see. Despite their great delivery, I often began to fall asleep in class, and this was one such day. As they threw down the lecture notes on my desk, they shocked me awake. The lecturer always printed up notes on the class and then added in some supplementary notes to give us some extra information. Now, because of their quirky personality, they would often throw in some extra information unrelated to their class. Sometimes it would be something related to sports or food, and often it would be related to technology. I could just tell that this lecturer was a real technology enthusiast. I started flicking through the notes that they put on my table this day, and I was trying to get through the boring marketing information, which was generally information that was 10 years out of date anyway, and just, I was looking to see, did they put anything interesting in those notes? And something interesting I did find. Our lecturer had inserted some notes from a futurist called Ray Kurzweil, where they talked about something called the technological singularity. I read through those notes and I was enthralled by what I read. This led me down a whole rabbit hole, and trust me, I went down many rabbit holes during college, but this technological singularity wasn't just another David Icke conspiracy rabbit hole. This was something that made logical sense, but at the same time, it was more crazy than anything I had ever heard from any conspiracy theorists before. So basically, the technological singularity explained goes like this. So the universe came into existence, and then the world came into existence. Species evolved and became more and more complex. Then humans came into existence, and humans began creating the first pieces of technology. The first pieces of technology were literally the simplest of things. They were just things like using a rock to open a coconut, stuff that we wouldn't even consider technology nowadays. Then as time went on, humans began creating better technology. First it was clothing and tools from stone. Then they started creating tools and items from brass, and then they started creating things from iron, and technology was gathering pace. But still, the growth of technology was incredibly slow. You could live a whole lifetime and never see a single invention. But over the last 1,000 years, technology began gathering pace. Each new invention opened the door for other inventions to be created. Then, around 300 years ago, steam power was created, and soon after, the Industrial Revolution began. The pace of technological growth quickened dramatically. We began to see mass production and distribution of products, and soon after, motorized vehicles were created. We saw the invention of planes and other flying crafts. We went from living in caves to walking on the moon. We invented the television, computers, the internet. And fast forward to today, and we are inventing at a rate never seen before. There are now more inventions created each day than there was in most of the rest of history. Now, some clever scientists started creating charts that tracked the rate of technological growth throughout history. And incredibly, they found that technology grows at a predictable rate. It doesn't grow at a predictable linear rate though. Technology instead grows at a predictable exponential rate. Now, exponential growth is something that the human brain finds very hard to understand. Our brains are only good at understanding linear growth, but exponential growth just doesn't really compute with us. But let me break it down a bit. So, if you were to count exponentially, it would go like this. So, 10, 100, 10,000, 100 million. And I couldn't even explain or speak what the next number in that sequence would be. So another great example to think of to understand exponential growth is to think of a chessboard which has 64 squares. And if you get a bag of rice and you place 1 grain of rice in the first square, then 2 in the second, 4 in the third, 8 in the fourth, 64 in the fifth, 4,096 in the sixth, 16,777,216 in the seventh square, and so on. As you can see, I'm going to really struggle with any numbers further on, but so on. And you just keep doing this. By the time you get to the 64 chessboard square, by adding pieces of rice exponentially, you'd have enough rice to cover the whole surface of Earth. Or, you know what's an even more simple example? I've always found this probably the most simple one to understand. If the length of your stride doubled with every step, how many steps would it take you to get all the way around the world? And the answer to that is 26. So it would only take you 26 steps to get all the way around the planet Earth if your stride doubled with every step. And that's exponential growth explained. Now imagine that technology is increasing at this rate, and realize that we are just at the point where things are about to get really crazy. So here I was in college reading all of this, and, Ray Kurzweil had done the math on all this. And basically, what Ray Kurzweil said is that somewhere between the year 2030 and 2040, we would create the first artificial general intelligence. And once we invent an AGI that is smarter than us, since it's smarter than us, it will instantly look at itself and find a way to make a smarter version of itself. And then that smarter version of itself straight away is going to be able to make another smarter version of itself. And this will just keep happening again and again and again and again at an exponential rate. So remember how that one grain of rice grew to the size of the whole world in only 64 steps? Well, AGI will grow at this rate. Within a year, it would have grown so far beyond human intelligence that we couldn't really understand or conceive of it in any way. In only a few years, it would be able to solve every issue on Earth, answer every question we ever had. It would be able to answer the deepest questions about why we are here and why Earth exists and why we exist. Within a few decades, technological growth would have reached a point that was called the technological singularity. So the technological singularity gets its name from the point in a black hole where math and physics break down and humans can't conceive of what lies beyond that point. With the technological singularity, this point is the point where we can no longer conceive of the world because technology has evolved so much. Ray Kurzweil couldn't tell us the steps of how we will get to this point. He just shows us the math that maps it out. And as an interesting side note, companies now, when they're working on projects, they actually account for this exponential growth. So a lot of times, the timeline for a project, they might expect a project to take 30 years to develop with just current technology. But they generally just say, oh, this project's only going to take 5 years because they know that technology is going to grow exponentially and going to make that project quicker. Now, as you can imagine, my mind was blown when I heard this as a young college student. I mean, I had many drunken nights where I discussed the technological singularity with college friends. I couldn't tell if it was all true, and it seemed just a bit like a dream of utopia to me, but the logic, the exponential charts, and the math did make sense to me. Since then, I've lived 30 more years of my life and hopefully I've become a little wiser. In that time, I've watched the world and I've seen Kurzweil's predictions playing out. I've seen technology advancing at a rapid pace. The internet was still in its infancy 13 years ago. YouTube was hardly a thing. Now new technologies are arriving every day. My job seems to be changing on a weekly basis because the technology is growing so quick. We are becoming closer to technology all the time. We're nearly at the point that we're becoming symbiotic with technology. And only in the last couple of years we have seen the rise of ChatGPT, which is a step closer to that artificial general intelligence. All of this has had me excited but also scared for the future of our planet. An AGI might instantly look at our planet and realise that there is one species killing all the others and causing all the issues. Solution: get rid of the problem species. Massive companies like Meta, Google and Amazon are battling to create better artificial intelligence and battling to create the first artificial general intelligence, because they know if they can achieve this, it will be endgame for their competitors. They will be the dominant company. And this would be a massive issue. If one of these companies were to become all-powerful, who knows what it would mean for the rest of humanity. It could be one step closer to Skynet from the Terminator movies, which used to seem crazy but seems quite realistic now. But these major companies have some huge technical barriers to achieving an AGI, and one of the biggest ones is that they can't harvest enough compute power to train and develop an AGI. Over the years, I've thought about how an AGI could develop. I always felt intuitively that it would be a good development for humans and for the planet, but I could be wrong about that, of course. I never saw an AGI as something that will develop totally outside of us. We're already upgrading ourselves with technology. Our smartphones connect us to the world and we can share ideas faster. The internet, Google and ChatGPT make us smarter. We're already adding implants to our bodies, while Elon Musk is using Neuralink to add the internet to our brains, while nanotechnology appears to be just around the corner. But I was waiting to see the obvious steps that we are close to an AGI. Ray Kurzweil now believes that we are around 6 years from the first true AGI. but it doesn't seem that obvious that an AGI is just around the corner. But remember, the thing that you have to think of is how exponential growth happens. It isn't something that is an obvious linear line. ChatGPT was one of the first things that really caught my attention, that we are moving closer towards this AGI. But then something popped up over the last few months that really blew my mind and made me see the path to achieving this AGI. You see, since my college years, I've grown up a little, but I've always kept that out there, fight the system, degenerate college student inside me. So blockchain and crypto technology became a real area of interest for me. I love the thoughts of decentralized finance and the ability to beat those big banking groups, and the ability to make some money from an investment. I thought the blockchain would just be something that would be used for finance until I recently discovered a project called Qubic. And what they are working on blew my mind, because I believe they are on the right path to creating the first AGI. The way Qubic works is much like Bitcoin, in that the transactions that happen on the platform are validated by miners. Miners basically use their compute power to validate transactions and get paid Bitcoin, or in this case, they get paid Qubic. Since there are hundreds of thousands of miners all over the world providing their power to the network, this decentralizes the whole thing. The issue with Bitcoin was always that the miners were using all this compute power to validate transactions, which was pretty wasteful. But Qubic has taken this idea one step further. They are taking all that compute power and they are using it to train artificial intelligence. So they're training this artificial intelligence on tasks like how to tell the difference between a cat and a dog, what the colour yellow, blue, red and so on look like, how to understand words, languages and how to translate between them, how to count and do math, how to make logical decisions. Then they're adding all this information together and combining it in artificial neural networks. Now, to understand artificial neural networks, let's first discuss how the human brain works. So when you're born, you don't know a lot. Sure, there are a lot of things that are passed down to you in your genetic code, but you generally have to learn most things. You have to learn what a cat looks like. You learn what a dog looks like. You learn how to distinguish between colours. You learn to speak. You learn to count. You learn to think logically. As you learn each of these things, neural pathways in your brain develop together so you can remember what you learned. Now, if these pathways or networks in your brain didn't develop, you'd have to learn everything again every time you see it, and you wouldn't see the connections between things. When you see a black cat for the first time, your brain has learned what a cat looks like, and it has learned the colour black, and it forms a neural pathway between those 2 points in your brain, and then they form a pathway with the language center in your brain so you can say black cat. You get to a point that you can look at a picture and, using your ability to count, recognize objects, do math, speak and perform logical reasoning, you can say things like, there's 2 dogs and 2 cats in this picture. One dog is black, one cat has green eyes. I don't think that they should all be in the same room together or unsupervised. Our brains seem amazingly complex, and of course they are, but at their basis, they are just simply interconnected learned thoughts, behaviours and memories. By the same process, Qubic is training artificial intelligence, everything about our world, and then combining it together in an artificial neural network so that the artificial intelligence will be able to look at the same picture that we looked at and describe it in detail. But at the same time, it will be able to make logical decisions about things it sees in the world. Google, Meta and Amazon have been training AI in a similar fashion. In fact, every time you complete a CAPTCHA form, you are helping these companies train AI. But they don't have the vast computing power required to correctly train enough artificial intelligence to create an AGI. But right now, miners all over the world are lending their compute power to the Qubic network, building a supercomputer and training Qubic's artificial intelligence. For example, a kid right now in Texas might have a gaming computer that they only use 2 hours per day. The rest of the day, they can use that computer power to mine Qubic and get paid to train artificial intelligence. And there isn't just that kid in Texas, there's probably kids in Ireland, in London, in Paris, in the Netherlands, in Africa, in Australia, in Japan, in China, all over the world, people mining and providing their compute power to this supercomputer that's training AI on all sorts of different tasks. This network of Qubic miners is growing every day and currently has around 500,000 participants, all lending their power to the Qubic network and building an artificial neural network that could become the first AGI. Not only that, but since there are different people all over the world powering the Qubic network, no one entity controls it. So this is decentralized, meaning one person won't be able to control or turn the AGI off. It will be an AGI owned by the people and not an AGI owned by Amazon, Google or Meta. Now maybe Qubic will fail in what they're doing, but they have already put the steps in place, and this seems to me to be the method that will be used to create the first artificial intelligence that is far beyond the intelligence of any human. And this will grow exponentially, just like the rice that covers the planet, until we have a future that will either be utopia for humans or something much darker. By the way, if you want to learn more about Qubic, there's a video on screen right now. Click that and check out some of the other things that I learned about Qubic, and I'll see you guys on the outside.